It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome back to another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. And of course, because it is a Friday, we got DB joining us as well. How are we doing, fellas?
Doing well, man. I'm excited. Friday, we got 2 days until Steelers game day. This is a matchup that I didn't expect to be excited for when the schedule came out. I'm just being completely transparent because I wasn't going to go to the game. So aside from like the regular, just, Steelers home opener kind of hype, I wasn't really excited for this one. But after the last couple of days being able to comb through the film, I'm actually quite excited to watch this matchup for some reason. So looking forward to it.
Alan, I feel like you kind of echoed that same sentiment on the Morning Rush this week, saying this was a matchup, you wouldn't have probably circled beforehand thinking that it's a big matchup, but 2-0 meets 2-0, and 3-0 teams have an 80% chance of making the NFL playoffs since going to the 7-team on each side format.
Yeah, I just want to clarify because I left the South Side about 15 minutes ago, drove straight here. The Steelers haven't lost another offensive lineman in that time, right? Like I haven't been on Twitter, so I just want to make sure that nobody else got hurt, since I left the South Side and drove home to record this podcast.
That's great news, and I hope that is still the case right now, and just as we continue to go through the podcast as well every second. Derek, to your point about just how I don't want to say lackluster, or before the season, this wouldn't have been a matchup that you circled every year. Like, people know how important the season ticket thing is to me and like going to games and stuff like that. The way I do it is everybody that's coming to a game with me gets to make their top 3 selections, and I make sure that they get one of those. There was like no one that wanted the Chargers, even though it was the home opener. So like it just kind of fell into my friend Christian's lap that he's coming to the game with me. So I'm excited for sure about this matchup, and we'll dive into that in a bit. But Alan, the reason that you mentioned that about the offensive lineman, Troy Fautanu goes down at some point during practice that wasn't able to get through the entirety of it. So it was Broderick Jones taking a lot of the first team reps at right tackle during the team period. This is not what you want to hear on a Friday, for sure. Ever, but for sure on a Friday.
Yeah, not good. And then the words MRI mentioned by Broderick Jones afterwards, really not inspiring a lot of confidence in Troy Fautanu's ability to play. The team listed him as questionable. It would not surprise me if we get an update to that tomorrow, positively or negatively. I get a really hard time seeing a guy who's just missed, a month with a knee injury. I don't know if it was the same knee or not, but coming back 2 days after a second one, I don't know. It seems to me very likely that you're going to see Broderick Jones start this game, Troy Fautanu miss it, and that's probably not what you want to see if you remember what happened at right tackle last game.
Derek?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I don't think that there's very much hope for Fautanu to play on Sunday. The big question that we're kind of still waiting on is like how serious was the quote unquote tweak. Hopefully it's just a minor thing, but it is worth mentioning that there were some concerns about why Troy may have dropped in the draft, that it could have been related to some older knee injuries from earlier in his football career. So when I saw knee, that kind of made me perk up in a negative way to an extent. And then, I think that obviously things were about as ugly as they could possibly be for Broderick last week. I mean, I don't think that you can really sugarcoat it any other way. Just the decision to rotate the tackles was one that was not well received, and I think that was probably an accurate viewpoint from the fan base. But I think it is a good thing potentially for Broderick to kind of get back on the saddle and find playing time maybe quicker than expected and see if he can kind of start to carve out a little bit of a redemption arc. I don't think that that's a easy thing to do, especially when you're going up against Joey Bosa, who's been playing extremely well this year. But I'm excited to see like what he does, with the opportunity.
I think he'll be better than we saw. I mean, it'd be hard for him to be worse than we saw him out there last week.
Sure.
I just think in general, like when you have a game like that, when you're not going to start, I think it's a little different than like this week. Even though, I mean, obviously Fautanu worked in the first team all week until today, but I just think like today's practice and then you go into that walkthrough Saturday, I mean, I think there's like a different level of detail that you prepare with when you're going to be starting. And especially with Broderick Jones, when he's backing up, he's splitting his time between left and right tackle. So like the fact that he got most of the practice today at right tackle, he will get the entire walkthrough tomorrow at right tackle. And like, he's going to kind of know going in that he's probably going to play. I think that'll just be better for him in general. Also, he's got his elbow brace off. Now, I don't know if he's going to be able to keep it off during the game, but he didn't practice with it this week. Swapped it out for that kind of big, thick rubber pad that like Jerome Bettis used to wear. If you're old like me and can remember Jerome Bettis. But so I think we talked a lot about how much that brace was bothering him. I think there's a chance that Broderick Jones goes out here and looks pretty good this week.
I mean, team needs it, right? So I'm certainly in favor of that happening. But to Derek's point, they get a pretty big test right out of the gate. I was kind of hopeful that we would kind of be able to reset with Broderick and he wouldn't have to play in a game for a bit. Getting thrown right back into that fire, though. So here we are. Anything else to add on that situation as we sit here?
No, I think that pretty much clears it up. I mean, to your point, it's been ugly so far this season. I think the big thing that you don't want and that kind of raises a little bit of a red flag for me is just like, if we include the preseason, there's been 2 of 4 times that we've seen him where like his play individually has torpedoed the offense. So like that is something that has to kind of play into like how you're predicting the game, just because there at least is a little bit of a chance that does happen, especially given the competition. I think Joey Bosa, when he's actually healthy, which has not been the case very much recently, is still like a tier 1, tier 2 type of edge rusher. He's also playing the run pretty well right now. So that kind of worries me a little bit, because like when you have a weak link on the offensive line that is making so many mistakes that it's putting the rest of the offense in jeopardy, that's significant. But like I said, I am excited to see. I mean, there's no doubt that Broderick's a talented kid. Like you can look at him, and I don't think we've seen his physical gifts to the top of their ability because of the brace, but like there is talent there. There's just a lot of like technical and I feel like mental stuff that he's got to work through and clean up. But in order for the Steelers, like this version of the Steelers, to reach their like highest potential, they need him to reach his potential. So this is kind of the first step on getting kind of back on that path. We'll see what it looks like.
The last thing I'm going to say about this is that we talked a lot this offseason about how deep the Steelers' offensive line is. It gone. Yeah. If Fautanu doesn't dress in this game, you're looking at the backup offensive lineman being like McCollum, McCormick, and John LeGlue. Like that's yeah. I mean, it's not great. 4th round rookie is probably the one guy you'd be the like somewhat okay with seeing, but it's not exactly a lot of depth there anymore. They really got to find a way to get some guys healthy, and it's incredible. Like they had 3 games last year where a person who was in pencil at the time as the starter missed a game. They've already had more than that in 2 weeks. Like that's crazy.
Well, we spent the last couple of years talking about how fortuitous they were with being able to kind of just run it with the same group along the offensive line. That has not been the case here early in the season. So that going in the wrong direction, going in the right direction. Roman Wilson sure looks like he's going to make his NFL debut. No injury designation. So I guess unless he were to be a healthy scratch, he's going to make his NFL debut on Sunday against the Chargers. Derek, I'll start with you. What are you looking forward to seeing from Roman Wilson in this? I think that expectations should probably be tempered a bit from the fan base. But do you think there is something that he can provide right away to this team that they haven't had?
All right, so Smitty, I'm going to give you a hockey assist on this one because I'm going to kick it to Alan because I want to know what his viewpoint.
All right, well,
I haven't seen it, so I want to know like what his viewpoint on how Roman's looked physically in practice and what are some of the things that he's seen, I guess, them ask him to do from a physical standpoint before I give like my take on what I think they should be asking him to do.
I think Roman looks like a guy who's coming back from a high ankle sprain, and that's not great. Like you can play, but like I don't know. I don't see a ton of explosiveness in his like cuts and movements right now. I think I would have pretty minimal expectations. I would expect him to be wide receiver 4 and get like 5 touches or less. And That's pretty much what I'm thinking. I don't think. I mean, I don't think you can come back from missing 7 weeks of football and just be good as a rookie. Like that's not going to happen. They really have to like restart his team development phase all over again, basically. So you have to do it in season. It's going to be really hard. I can't recall a lot of rookies having a ton of success after missing their entire training camp and preseason with an injury and then coming back early in the season just looking normal. Like it's not going to happen. I think it's going to take weeks. I honestly, like, I've been kind of hesitant to like write definitively he's going to play. I think there is a chance that he could be cleared and be a healthy scratch for this game. Like I don't think that's impossible.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much matches kind of what my expectation would have been as far as like how he's looked. I think the big thing, like with the high ankle sprain, is like, you have to be able to, like, until we see him go out there and like run routes and cut off of that ankle and like the type of explosiveness he's able to generate off of the ankle, it's kind of difficult to see like how effective he would be. I think like ideally with the way that the rest of the receiver core is played, especially like when you go back and look at that Denver game where, they had pretty much their guys getting locked up, especially in the second half when Denver was just able to pretty much one-on-one across the board and just win their matchups with the receivers not able to create any separation. I think the big thing would be like, could we get him out there in some specialized packages and say like, hey, can you go run some deep crossers? Can you go get us a catch over the middle of the field? The Steelers have only completed 4 passes over the middle of the field this year. None of those have been for longer than 10 yards. So that's kind of been a big void that they haven't been able to access yet. Roman last year at Michigan, 13 of his catches came on crossing routes, 280 yards, 4 touchdowns per PFF. That was kind of like his thing. So you think about getting that horizontal stretch on the defense, maybe off some play action, and then maybe you can try to also use him in the vertical stretch too. But I do agree. Like I need to see like what it really looks like physically. Now I think like, expectations for the fan base do need to be tempered. Like I would be really surprised. I would be just extremely surprised if like this week they just started rolling him out there and just said, hey, like go play outside. Like I just don't think that's going to be what they do. Now, could they get him involved in the slot? Like I absolutely think they could. But to Alan's point, like I guess, when special teams and things like that become a factor, like you have a decision to make. Like if you're going to carry a wide receiver who's never really played special teams as a wide receiver 4 on the active 53, if he's not going to be able to contribute there. So I think expectations need to be tempered, but I also think like they're kind of desperate on offense for anyone who can create their own space. And I think that Roman could potentially help that just with his speed if he's healthy.
I'd be interested to see. Last week, they used Scotty Miller as the one wide receiver when they went 13 personnel.
Don't remind me.
I would be very interested to see Roman take that role. I think he's a better blocker. I think if he is still like lacking some explosiveness in his ankle, that's an area where you're not gonna you can hide that a little bit, because basically you're coming out there saying like we're gonna run the ball or we're gonna do something short yardage or something like that. Like you're kind of stretching the field out of the equation anyway. I think that could be an interesting role for him. I think they just got to find a place that they can carve out some space to get him in. And like you said, if they look at it and say, okay, here's what we got 3 packages for Roman Wilson. He's going to get 11 snaps, but then we can't use someone else that we want to use as a punt gunner or whatever, then I could very well see them deciding just to keep him on the bench for another week and until they can really figure out exactly what they have in him.
Brandon Johnson.
If he doesn't play, I think Brandon Johnson will.
I said it earlier in the week. I'm just gonna keep saying it until I see him play. I gotta see him get a helmet once.
Yeah, I think that another thing too that I think Roman does really well is I think even though his side, like he's a small dude, he fights for the ball, especially between the numbers, better than like some of their other smaller players on the roster right now. And he's just really tough. Like you mentioned the blocking aspect, but I also like think that he finishes plays well through contact. And that's something that I think is lacking with some of the other small receivers that they got on the roster. I just, it's just difficult right now because I kind of talked about this a little bit on my channel like earlier this week. I don't know that the limitations that this team is going to have through the air are going to get fixed from a personnel standpoint. Like, I don't see a path for that really being the case. I think that the best case scenario is that, the offensive line gets healthy, they start bludgeoning people at the line of scrimmage, and then like the play action passing game is like more of a vertical threat, and you're able to kind of create explosives out of that. Like, the thing that I think you have to consider, like when considering whether to dress Roman or how much he needs to play or whatever, they've only got 5 explosive plays on the season. The Carolina Panthers are the only team with less in the NFL, like, especially off play action. Like, they've got to find a way to create some of these explosives. Now, granted, they had 2 big ones called back due to penalty, which I think is worth noting, but they're still like in the very, very bottom quadrant of the league in that spectrum. And like figuring out where to create your explosive plays that's kind of like the name of the game of the NFL right now.
Yeah. The question is like how much can he even add to that, I guess, right now with coming back from the high ankle.
That's the big unknown is like, what does he look like physically?
Yeah, I think the one thing about that is like, I don't think the running game hasn't been bad, but it hasn't been so good to like make defenses adjust to it, and that's like what they need, I think, to start to open some of that big stuff up. And they also haven't used the running game to get in like super advantageous down and distances. Like, we haven't seen a lot of 2nd and 2. Like, they're staying with the sticks, but it's like 3 or 4 yards. It's 2nd and 8, 2nd and 7, 3rd and 4. Like, if you want to really stress out a defense, you got to get them in 2nd 1, 2nd and 2, where you can really like open up the playbook a little bit and feel comfortable doing it. And they haven't really done that yet. So I think if they can run the ball a little bit better, and I'm not sure this will be the week. I actually don't think this Chargers defense should be that good against the run just on paper. I think they're way better. I think their edge rushers are really good, but I think they're not that big. Like, they're kind of undersized. I don't think the interior, like linebacker and D tackle, are very good. So I think you can run the ball against them, but they've got to run the ball better than they have to really start to open up the passing game. Like, right now, they're kind of tying everywhere, right? Like, the defense says, "Oh, you ran the ball 3 yards. Great, we would have taken that." And they're like, "Hey, we ran the ball 3 yards. At least we didn't turn it over." And there's no advantage gained by their running game so far.
I think like coming into the season, like we kind of expected, like the guards are going to be the focal point of the offense. Like, you needed to have like a really good guard pairing in order to dominate the line of scrimmage. James Daniels, I think he's not playing up to what I've seen him play in the last couple of years either. I think that his play has been like extremely high variance. There's some really good plays on film, and then there's a lot of times where I felt like he was losing one-on-ones, particularly with Zach Allen last week. And then like they just need Isaac Seumalo back. I don't really think that it's necessarily a secret. I think Seumalo was probably their best offensive lineman last year, and him not being out there, like there's just things that Spencer Anderson right now is struggling with. He looks to me like a 7th round second-year player who is forced into the lineup due to injury. And like, that's not trying to bag on Spencer Anderson or anything like that, but it's just the reality of the situation. When they get Seumalo back, they're going to be a lot better from a personnel standpoint. And then just to your point, Alan, of like getting in advantageous situations from a down and distance perspective, stop committing penalties. Like, the 19 penalties over the past 2 weeks are killing them. Like, this team is not a team that's built to win in 3rd and long. But when you keep committing all of these penalties, you're consistently behind the sticks. So yeah, it's multi-layered. But we'll see what the offense looks like. And everybody seems super confident that they're really on the brink of like breaking through. So it would be a good week for this to happen.
We've talked about Roman Wilson obviously coming back from high ankle sprain. I feel like that's kind of a theme of the show, because as we start to flip the switch to talk about this Chargers matchup, Justin Herbert, the Chargers quarterback, dealing with a high ankle sprain. I mean, you guys have seen the pictures. That thing is heavily taped. It's his right ankle, same side that he had the plantar fasciitis injury on as well. So, like, what do we make of this? Do we think that he's going to try to give it a go on Sunday? If he does, how effective is he going to be? Kind of seems like a wounded duck situation if he's out there against these edge rushers in defensive front.
Dude, that picture from practice today is like the NFL record for tape to ankle ratio. Like, I've never seen anything taped as heavily.
How many rolls?
As that ankle. That's like 5 whole rolls of tape on his ankle. Like, you can't even tell there's an ankle under there. It's like he's wearing 2 different color shoes. How can he even move with that? I don't know. Maybe they're like playing games, or maybe Like he's hopeful that it's going to feel a lot better in 2 days' time, but that looks like a guy that's going to get killed out there with TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith coming down the pipe. I can't believe the Chargers would watch what the Steelers did to Kirk Cousins and be like, "Oh, we want our immobile quarterback out there for this one. Oh, by the way, he's basically our entire franchise." So when he breaks his collarbone because TJ Watt just decleats him, like now we're screwed for the entire season. I have a hard time seeing them make that choice.
Yeah, it's really difficult to me because, if you watch the Chargers play, and like some of this has to do with the opponents that they play, like Carolina, I don't think is like a real NFL football team right now. So it's hard to take really anything away from that game in particular. But they're so run heavy and this like hardball pro style, which I wrote about this for Steelers.com today. But just the feel of this offense, it feels very like Andrew Luck Stanford-y. From like Harbaugh's like 2000s run with that squad, but they're not asking, or they haven't had to ask Herbert to do a ton with his arm thus far. They've been really leaning into the run game, trying to establish things into the trenches, which the results have been really good. But they're even doing some stuff like in week 1, they ran a zone read play out of the pistol, and Herbert kept it, and they got an explosive run out of it. It's like that's off the table this week. Like he can't do that. And then like you guys mentioned. Just how much is he actually going to be able to move around in the pocket? Like one of the things that I think that Herbert does really well is, I almost think he's like too robotic of a quarterback at times. He's a really quick processor, sometimes too quick. He almost tries to be too perfect from an accuracy standpoint. I think with his arm being arguably like the strongest in the league, I think that he could afford to be a lot more creative as a thrower and take more chances. But one of the things he does well is like he mitigates sacks. Like he does a good job, protecting his offensive line from a pressure standpoint. If you can't move, and the Steelers have been basically strictly just rushing 4, but they're still in the top half of the league of pressure rate. So it's like, if he can't move, what are we supposed to do with that? Are they going to be able to protect him, like you said, against those edge rushers? And I'm sure that they got trust in their tackles. I mean, Rashawn Slater's playing fantastic ball right now. Even Joe Alt's look pretty good, but yeah, I mean, I think they've got a big decision to make. Is this one game? Like, my question would be is like, how long until Herbert's even close to being 100% or to where you're comfortable? If you think it might be next week, it would probably be beneficial for the Chargers to sit him, in my opinion. But Herbert's also a really tough dude. I'm sure, I don't know how much Chargers ball people on this podcast have watched in recent years, but
we have a huge Chargers contingent now, thanks to Alan.
But,
I brought in all the Chargers fans.
Sweet. But like, that dude's tough as nails, man. Like, he will take a lick. He will stand in the pocket, deliver the ball. He's played through some stuff in the past. Like, I know, like, he had his ribs banged up a year or 2 ago, if I remember correctly. Yep. He's, like, stayed in the game and was still delivering shots down the field. He's tough. Like, I don't think you got anything to worry about there. It's just, like, there's a risk-reward type of thing. And, like, the Steelers could be positioned to maybe get a break. To see, I think it's Taylor Heineke maybe as their backup. Is that the case?
Easton Stick is next on the depth chart.
Well, what's interesting is Easton Stick's lifted as the 2, but for some reason, like 30 minutes after it got put out about Herbert having a high ankle and being questionable, they were talking about how quickly Taylor Heineke has picked everything up. So I was like, is this a way of kind of saying that he would be the guy?
I think Taylor Heineke is a better quarterback than Easton Stick, personally.
I believe so as well.
I would probably agree. And Taylor Heineke does not scare me at all, if we're being completely transparent.
You mentioned the edge rushers and those tackles, but like I actually think the softest spot on this LA offensive line is the interior, center and right guard. And man, have the Steelers D tackles been friggin' on one this season? Dude, Cam Hayward looks fantastic. Keanu Benton, I think we all expected him to take a step forward. Larry Ogunjobi looks the best I think I've seen him in a Steelers uniform. And friggin' Mont Adams, dude, he just makes a big play every week. Like, those 4 guys I think are going to eat in this game. And you can't just focus on the defense on the ends coming up the field. Like, yeah, I think Slater, honestly, like, if there's a team that's comfortable with their matchup against Alex Highsmith, I think the Chargers probably should feel good about Slater. But like, TJ Watt's going to get his against the rookie, absolutely. And then those guys up the middle, I think, are going to dominate. I think Herbert's toughness, honestly, like, if I'm Jim Harbaugh, concerns me even more. Like, this is a guy who's going to try to stay in the pocket and make throws, and it's going to result in him getting hit really hard if he can't move.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so let's kind of pivot away from just Justin Herbert here in the Steelers defense. What other matchups do you think that we should be looking for in this one? Like Josh Palmer is also questionable. He hasn't practiced all week. We know Junior Colson's not going to go. So from either perspective, whether it's something Steelers offense versus Chargers defense or vice versa, what are the matchups you're kind of looking forward to? Derrick, we'll start with you.
I mean, I wrote about it for SteelersNow.com today, but I think like the things that I'm most looking forward to is like the Chargers coming out with 2 backs and 2 tight ends and these jumbo personnel packages, and they're doing some creative stuff. I mean, like I've even seen them like move. Like normally, like when teams like bring in extra tight ends, you just get into like a wing formation. They've even like moved Rashawn Slater, I think, over to like next to Joe Alt in some of these run packages. But I'm just like really what I'm most excited to see. I want one like full speed collision between this 290 converted fullback that the Chargers got on the roster and a Landon Roberts.
Yeah.
That's what I want. I just want to see who wins.
I don't, because I'll be at the stadium and I know that thing's going to explode.
Yeah, it may end the world, but I'm excited for that. And then just like I think that the Steelers are built to withstand this, but I want to see I think like I wrote about, we're gonna see how tough the Steelers defense is. Like you talk about some of the moves that they've made. You know, you give Cam Hayward a contract extension. Like we talked about how good a ball he's playing right now, especially against the run, splitting double teams, take it back space at the line of scrimmage. Landon Roberts, like this is the game for Landon Roberts, man. Like you want to bring a fullback on the field, like yeah, we got number 50. Let's see what that looks like. And then even a guy like Patrick Queen, who I think's gotten off to a little bit of a slow start, but this could be a game where like his range, like sideline to sideline, kind of shows up a little bit too. And this is like kind of a precursor to like what we're going to expect. Like when this team gets later into the season, starts playing some of these AFC North opponents, particular Baltimore. This feels like a Baltimore week for me. I think it's the Greg Roman of it. It's the J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards of it. But like it feels very Baltimore-ish from a Steelers defensive perspective. So I always get hyped up for those matchups, and maybe it's, you know, the millennial in me and I'm getting a little bit older to get really excited about this kind of smash mouth football that we're going to get on Sunday. But I'm pretty jacked up. That's really like the majority of where my excitement comes from this week.
I think the Steelers can unload some of those deep balls we talked about. Lohi Gilman, the free safety, is hurt. I think Elijah Molden is going to play back there. And I think Christian Fulton and Asante Samuel and Derwin James are like pretty solid starters at 3 spots, but that's like a big hole. And I really want to see Art Smith unload some high lows on that safety position and see what he can do. I think the Chargers are going to have to bring the strong safety up into the box. Like for all the conversation that we've had around the NFL about cover 2 this week, you might not see a single snap of it in this game. Like it might not be any cover 2 in this entire game. I think the Chargers are going to have Derwin James up in the box. He's probably going to have Pat Freiermuth. So I'm really interested. Calvin Austin, get some like slot posts, some slot fades going, try to stress out that center field safety. I think if I'm trying to attack this Chargers defense, I think the middle is the softest spot. I think Jalen Warren out of the backfield could be really big too. I don't like have anything against like Dan Henley, but I just don't think that's like a great matchup for the Chargers. I think that's another place where I think the Steelers can take advantage of like their personnel, their receiving personnel is not great. They've got to find the places where they can pick at the soft spots and defenses. With Junior Colson out and Henley and Perriman, I think those guys can be attacked by Jalen Warren. I think they can use their receivers to get into that center field area. I don't think Elijah Molden's very good. And so I think there's a couple places where they can attack. It's really going to be up to Arthur Smith to get guys into those spots. I'm interested to see if he's able to do it.
Okay, couple things. Elijah Molden not being good really hurts me because of how I felt about him pre-draft. Thought he was going to be a stud in the slot. 2, Jalen Warren was my guy for this week, and I wanted to bring him up, and I was like, just get through this without mentioning him. Just get through this without mentioning him. Because we've been talking all week about how this is a week for the QB run stuff to return, to slow down the pass rush. Another way to do that, the screen game. It just feels to me like Jalen Warren. I know his touches went from 4 to 11 from week 1 to week 2. I think that goes up again here in week 3. Obviously, health relating to that as well, but I also just feel like it just seems like a Jalen Warren game to me.
Here's a little nugget too. Speaking of guys that we liked pre-draft, that people should pay attention to. Yes, Asante Samuel. guy that I liked a lot coming out of Florida State. I think Samuel is a good coverage player in the secondary. You have got to make him tackle because he is atrocious at it. So, like, you talk about Jalen Warren, like getting him the ball in the flat. Maybe you can take advantage of, like, maybe some of these underneath targets to maybe Freiermuth in the flat, like with to Samuel's side. He missed a tackle. I think it was against the Raiders in week 1 that led to an explosive play. Just historically speaking, like that's been the Achilles heel of his career. That's another reason why he primarily plays on the outside and not in the slot, because the run defense or tackling aspect of it is just not for him. Like, he's not a big dude. I think his technique is atrocious. He's a guy that just dives at people's legs without keeping his helmet up. So that's an area too where it's like, how are we going to create explosive plays? You mentioned the screen game, run at him, try to get him in space in those one-on-one situations with some of your talented ball carriers, make him tackle. That's something that I'm going to be watching for as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, let's get into the last thing that we want to do here then, which is predictions. That includes the score of this game, and also, how we roll. You got to make at least one semi-bold prediction that you feel like is going to come true on Sunday.
I'll go first. I have a very, very specific prediction here.
Okay.
My prediction is that the Steelers will get out to an early lead. They will attempt to once again sit on that early lead and be fairly conservative on offense. This week, it will not work. The Chargers will score late to take the lead. And Justin Fields leads them on a last-second field goal drive. Chris Boswell game winner, 2019 Steelers.
Ooh.
Oh, wow.
That is very specific.
Allen
was like, I wonder how specific are we talking here? All right, DB.
Yeah, Allen was in the lab this morning crafting that one up. I'm impressed. I don't have
I felt like I was watching it happen just now, and I'm like almost started waving my towel just hearing about it.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to start thinking more about these specific scenarios before I jump on the pod on Friday. I am conflicted here because to me, I don't know if the Steelers. I talked about this, but like ESPN, like Ben Solak, who does good work. He like kind of has dubbed this as like the Pretender Bowl because he's got both the Chargers and the Steelers as quote unquote pretenders at 2-0, and like I don't think that either one of these teams are like good enough teams to like really be considered 3-0 teams. But like that's just the way that it's played out. Like they've been playing kind of punching above their weight maybe a little bit, and some of it has to do with the quality of opponent too. But I kind of like the Steelers here. I think I've like slowly talked myself into them winning this game. I personally think it's going to be the ugliest game of all time. Like if you're someone who is like a new age football fan that really likes to light up the scoreboard, I think my bold prediction for this game is like we get 70. No, let's just go bolder. I think there's a chance we get 75 to 80 rushing attempts between the two teams. Like, I think it could be that drastic because of Herbert's health. I also think that the Steelers
I'll be home by like 3 p.m.
Yeah, I think the Steelers have a preference to play that way in general. You guys mentioned like the quarterback run game stuff. I think that could play into effect here. I kind of want, in my like perfect vision of how this game would play out, I think both these teams would probably just stay in like 12 personnel and just run the ball every time unless they get into 3rd and long, and we'll just see who the tougher team is. And that's kind of like the best case scenario from an entertainment standpoint for me. So I'll say the Steelers win a close one. I think the under is definitely, I don't know what the under is, but give me the under. And then I'll say like 75, 80 rushing attempts combined between the two teams.
It was like 36 and a half.
Yeah, it's 34 and a half now.
It keeps going down.
Yeah. Fully not knowing what's going on with Justin Herbert here. I'm going to take the Steelers for sure. And I kind of have 2 bold predictions. One of them I feel like is the score, because I'm predicting that the Steelers score over 20 points in this game. That alone, I feel like, is bold in itself. I'm also going with a very odd score, 22-16. The Steelers win on Sunday. Bold prediction, other than the score, and Landon Roberts forced fumble.
Love it.
I like that. Yeah, I don't know what personnel you call it when you line up with 2 running backs, 2 tight ends, and a nose tackle. I don't know what you call that in the personnel scheme, but we're going to see a lot of that from LA this week.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff to watch. I don't know. We'll see. Go ahead.
I asked Keanu Benton if he was arguing to be like, hey, you see what a nose tackle can do out there on offense? Like, let me in. I can do it. But he said he thought he could do it, but he wasn't agitating for it. So
of course he thinks he can do it. I wouldn't doubt him.
Selfless man.
I think he's to your point. I think he could be in line for a big.
Landon Roberts did play fullback when he was in New England.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I need that more than I need air.
Throwing that out there.
We brought up the touchdown when we had him on the pod that he scored.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to go look that up.
Yeah. All right, you know the drill. DB, tell the people they find you.
At Steelers_DB, Twitter, and on YouTube. And then all my written work can be found at SteelersNow.com.
There you go. And Alan?
Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, and TikTok. PGH Steelers Now is the site's account, SteelersNow.com. That's where the words live. Read them so I can get paid.
And this is plus. This is a plus sign.
Oh, plus, SN plus. Use promo code Allen10 if you like me more. You can use promo code Derrick10 if you like Derrick more. Either way, it gets you 10% off an annual subscription, which works out to like $4 a month. And it's well worth it to get no ads, plus all the best stuff from me and DB. And over at the site.
Those ads stink. Yeah, you got to get rid of those ads.
They're bad.
They're bad and they suck.
It's really, and like, just do it. It's better.
Yeah. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here. Hit us in the comments with your thoughts. Anything we talked about today. We want your predictions as well in the comments. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you are listening somewhere else. Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast from. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. You'll find us there, which is the same place you can find us on TikTok. Steelers Afternoon Drive over there as well. And then find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Alan Saunders, Derrick Bell, and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.